Hello, little friends. Today I have a very special story just for you. It's about a woman named Jenny who once thought her life was filled with sadness. But with courage, kindness, and the help of a good friend, she discovered something magical, that true happiness was in her own hands. So, are you ready? Let's begin this wonderful story together. One bright spring afternoon, in a small park of a quiet town, Annie was sitting on a wooden bench near the rose garden. Cherry blossoms were blooming, children were laughing as they played, and the air carried the gentle songs of birds. This was Annie's favorite place to relax after work, to breathe, to think, or simply to enjoy the sunshine. That day, she heard slow, hesitant footsteps approaching. A thin woman with weary eyes and messy hair walked toward her. At first, Annie did not recognize her, but there was something familiar in her face. "Annie, is that you?" the woman asked softly. Annie looked again, and then she gasped. It was Jenny, her old college friend. Years ago, Jenny had been admired by everyone. Beautiful, confident, and full of dreams. But now, she looked so fragile, so different, with sadness written all over her face. Jenny sat down beside Annie, and after a long silence, she began to speak. She told Annie about her past, about the love she once had. Jenny had met a wonderful mankind, hard-working and caring. Together, they dreamed of marriage and a happy family. Jenny believed her future would be filled with light. But one day, she visited a fortune teller. The man told her that her destiny was cursed. He warned her that if she stayed with the man she loved, she would bring him only sorrow and ruin his life. Jenny's heart was broken. She was young, naive, and afraid. She thought that leaving was the only way to protect him. So she walked away, and her dreams of happiness shattered. Not long after, Jenny met another man. She thought perhaps this was fate guiding her, but instead of love, she found misery. The man was poor, and though Jenny never minded poverty, he had no dreams, no kindness. He drank heavily, and when he was angry, Jenny became his target. There were nights when she hid in the bathroom, holding her breath while he shouted and pounded on the door. Sometimes he even struck her. The girl who once dreamed of joy had become a woman who only dreamed of escape. Finally, Jenny could endure no more. She left him, but she carried with her deep scars. She was divorced, broke, and alone. In the years that followed, she struggled to survive working small jobs, barely paying rent, and always wondering if the fortune teller had been right. Perhaps, she thought, she truly was cursed. Annie listened quietly, her heart aching for her old friend. She took Jenny's hand gently and said, "Jenny, you are not cursed. You are just hurt. But pain does not define the rest of your life." Jenny shook her head, her voice trembling. But I'm already past 40. Everyone says my best years are gone. I feel like nothing good is left for me. Annie leaned closer, her eyes kind but firm. Who told you that life ends at 40? Jenny, your life is not over. You are like a book with many chapters. Maybe the earlier chapters were sad, but the story isn't finished. The most beautiful part can still come. Jenny looked at her uncertainly, her hands shaking slightly. Then, with a playful smile, Anni suddenly reached out. Give me your palm. Jenny blinked. You know palm reading? Annie laughed softly. Of course I do well, at least enough to see what really matters. Reluctantly, Jenny placed her trembling hand into Annie's. Annie studied the lines with a serious face, then widened her eyes in mock surprise. Jenny, she said with conviction, your palm tells a different story. It says that after 40, your life will open like a new chapter. Joy, luck, and hope are waiting for you. You've endured the storm, now comes the sunlight, Jenny gasped, hope flickering in her tired eyes. Do you mean it? You're not just saying that to comfort me. Annie squeezed her hand gently. I've never been more serious. Jenny, sometimes we just need someone to remind us that happiness is possible. Believe me, your best years are ahead. For the first time in years, Jenny felt something warm stirring inside her heart. It was small, fragile, but real, like the first spark of light breaking through the dark. From that day on, Jenny carried Annie's words in her heart. Fate lies within these very hands. At first, she wasn't sure what to do. The pain of the past was still heavy, but she decided to start with the smallest steps. One morning, she cleaned her little apartment. She washed the dusty curtains, polished the old table, and put away things she no longer needed. The place was still small, but once it was brighter and tidier, Jenny felt her heart grow lighter too. Next, she began to walk in the park every morning. At first, her legs were heavy and her breath short, but little by little, her body grew stronger. She started to notice things she had ignored before: the sunlight streaming through the trees, the fresh air on her face, the sparrows chirping on the branches. For the first time in years, Jenny smiled, just because the world was beautiful. One day, Jenny passed by the town's community center. Inside, she found free classes, painting, cooking, pottery. Jenny remembered how she used to love drawing when she was a little girl. She signed up for painting, even though she was nervous. At first, her lines were shaky and her colors uncertain. But day by day, the pictures on her paper began to take shape. She realized something important. Just like her painting, her life could also be redrawn. Jenny made friends in the class women who had also known hardship, but who still laughed brightly and believed in tomorrow. They encouraged her, calling her the woman with the beautiful but slightly sad eyes. Their kindness made Jenny feel she was no longer alone. Soon after, she found work in a small bookstore near the town square. At first, she only cleaned shelves and arranged books. But the shop owner noticed how she loved stories and how gently she spoke to customers. He asked her to host a weekly story time for children. The first time Jenny stood in front of the children, she trembled with fear. But as she began to tell tales about brave rabbits and gentle princesses, the children's sparkling eyes gave her courage. She discovered she had the power to bring joy with nothing more than her words and her smile. Day by day, Jenny changed. Her clothes became neater, her hair freshly trimmed, her smile brighter. People even said she looked 10 years younger. But the biggest change was inside. Jenny no longer believed she was cursed. She no longer thought her fate was sealed. Every small step tidying her home, walking in the park, painting a picture, telling a story, was proof that she could shape her own future. Each night, before falling asleep, she placed her hand gently on her chest and whispered, "Life lies within these very hands, and with these hands I will shape a brighter tomorrow." 1 year later, on a golden summer afternoon, Anni returned to the same park where everything had begun. The cherry trees were full of green leaves, the air filled with the laughter of children. She did not expect to see Jenny again, but what she saw made her heart leap. Walking along the path was a woman in a soft blue dress. Her hair shone under the sunlight, her face was fresh and glowing, her steps light and graceful. Annie almost didn't recognize her. "Jenny!" she called, standing up quickly. You look completely different." Jenny smiled, her eyes sparkling with life. She ran to Annie and embraced her. "Annie, I've come back to life. I've learned to love myself, to work hard, and to believe in tomorrow. Do you know something? I'm now managing the bookstore, and I've even started a children's reading club. Those kids teach me more than any book. They remind me every day that hope is always there." Annie's eyes filled with tears of pride. "Jenny, you're amazing. But all of this happened because you had the courage to change." Jenny shook her head gently. "No, Annie. Without you, I might still believe I was cursed. You were the first person who told me the truth, that the future is in my own hands. You gave me the faith to begin." The two friends sat on the old wooden bench, just like they had a year ago. The sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. Jenny quietly looked at her palms. The lines were still there, but this time she no longer saw them as chains. "Annie," she whispered, smiling softly, "I finally understand. Fate doesn't live in the stars or in fortune tellers' words. Fate lives here in our own hands, in every choice, in every step forward." Annie returned the smile, squeezing her hand. "Exactly, Jenny, and you've proved it with your own life." As children's laughter echoed across the park and the summer breeze rustled through the trees, Jenny felt peace fill her heart. She knew her journey was far from over, but she no longer feared the future, because now she believed with all her heart that she was the writer of her own story. Life is not written by fate. Life is written by ourselves. And so, the story of Jenny and Annie comes to an end. It was a journey filled with both sadness and joy, but in the end, Jenny found her own light. Children, Jenny's story teaches us something very important. Destiny is not written in advance. Life does not live in the words of fortune tellers, nor in the stars above. Life is right here in our own hands, in every choice we make and in every small action each day. If we dare to change, to take steps forward, and to believe in ourselves, life will always become brighter. Just like Jenny, who once felt hopeless and sad, but grew into a strong, joyful person who now brings happiness to others. And that is where our story ends. I wish you a wonderful day, full of smiles. And always remember, life rests in your very own hands.